years ago, this hour, Canadian troops were already on their ships, learning that they would be in the first wave, landing at Juno Beach on June 6th, surging ashore in an assault that would give the Allies a bridgehead against the Nazis in France and begin a battle that changed the tide of the Second World War. 14,500 Canadians from regiments across the country were in the largest seaborne invasion in history. These are restored and colorized images from that day, rare footage of the men with the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division and 2nd Armored Brigade. Another 10,000 Canadian sailors were in the D-Day fleet. Airmen from 39 Royal Canadian Air Force squadrons flew in bombers and fighter planes, and the 1st Canadian Parachute Battalion dropped behind the enemy lines. 574 Canadians were wounded on D-Day. 381 were killed in action, and many of their graves are at the Canadian War Cemetery, the Bény-sur-Mer Canadian War Cemetery in France. Good morning. I'm Heather Hiscox. Welcome to our special coverage of D-Day commemorations. There are tributes this morning ahead of tomorrow's ceremony to mark the 80th anniversary of that history-changing day. We're going to take you to the Canadian War Cemetery and a poignant remembrance of the Canadians who were killed in action on D-Day. It has just ended, and we are going to have it for you in full this hour. But I want to begin this morning with our senior international correspondent, Margaret Evans, who has been there to observe the historic ceremony at the Bény-sur-Mer Canadian War Cemetery. There she is live. Margaret, it is so good to see you on this day. Behind you, so poignant, a scene we return to every 5 years for the major D-Day commemorations. As I mentioned, it is the final resting place for thousands of Canadian soldiers. Tell us about the significance of where you are right now.
Well, as you say, thousands of headstones, to be specific, 2,048. Most of them are Canadian. As you can see, the graves behind me are so well kept. That's in part because of the surrounding communities. And this ceremony this morning has been extremely intimate. Local villagers, we've seen people bringing their families, little French children, going up to the veterans who've traveled here from Canada to be here. Not all of them are D-Day veterans, but they're all World War II veterans. There are 13 of them traveling, 8 of them from the Normandy campaign and 4 of them from D-Day itself. And so this is a chance for the future generations to meet those who actually fought on the beaches for the freedom of Europe and, of course, the world and the world order that we see somewhat threatened today. This is a cemetery that's inland. It's a little bit inland from Juno Beach, which of course is where all the Canadians were landing 80 years ago tomorrow. And we've heard from some of the veterans about their first-hand point of view. They can still remember it. And I should tell you just how beautiful the countryside around is. It is peaceful. Wheat fields, canola oil fields. And as we were walking up the road, you could see the poppies springing up in the midst of the wheat fields. Incredibly beautiful, incredibly moving, and very, as I said, intimate, gentle, small.
You know, Margaret, I'm always struck by that as I look at the scenes on these major commemorations, how respectfully, how lovingly the French look after what is really that sacred site for so many Canadians. As we speak, Margaret, I'm going to bring in some scenes of the ceremony that you have witnessed, but we're going to see the arrival of the Canadian delegation. And just so people understand, it's led by the Honourable Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor, who's Canada's Minister of Veteran Affairs. You see Stéphane Dion, Canada's Ambassador to France and Monaco, Canada's Chief of Defence Staff, General Wayne Eyre. Those are in the front of the delegation. But of course, also there, and really the stars in so many ways, Margaret, as you mentioned, the veterans. And I'm wondering, they have returned, some of them, to the beaches of Normandy to remember past exploits, to remember their fallen comrades. As you see them and hear from them and speak to them, what effect is this having on them?
Well, I mean, they're being very well cared for, but as you could imagine, it's emotional. A lot of them say they know that this well may be the last time that they are able to come here, and a lot of them are actually quite worried. In fact, all of the veterans that I've spoken to, if you ask them, do you think that the world is going to remember the sacrifice and what was being fought for at the time, they say no. Now, I also talked to a group of Canadian students from high school in Ontario who were here. They disagree. They say we're going to carry the torch. They say that it is being taught in schools. But they also said, you know, there was a young man of Ukrainian heritage here who said, you know, I worry that we could still see war in our lifetime, but to say that it's going to be forgotten, they disagree. But for the veterans, they're really feeling that there is a danger that they will be forgotten, and that this sort of bridge between generations could be lost.
You know, Margaret, I think today and tomorrow as we watch those veterans, it's going to be especially poignant to watch them knowing that this is likely to be the last major commemoration where there will be living veterans in attendance. And because of that, France has really made this the most extensive commemoration ever in terms of scope and logistics. So we will see that unfold over the next couple of days. This is the Canadian commemoration, of course. Margaret, we're just about to watch it in its entirety. Can you give us a little bit, as you have already experienced it live, what can we look forward to in the next hour?
Well, the most important part, the arrival of the veterans themselves, very moving. Many of them wheeled in individually in their wheelchairs by their carers or family members, and a wave of applause going through the crowds as they approached the seating area. We did hear, of course, what you hear at all of these ceremonies, the last post, the revelry, the sound of bagpipes again echoing through the countryside here. But the most enjoyable, I think, and I'm not sure you'll get to see it, is at the end when the crowds and the locals get to mingle and actually get up to talk to the veterans, to thank them and to shake their hands.
Margaret, thank you so much as she sets the tone and takes us to the place, the Bény-sur-Mer Canadian War Memorial. And we're about to watch in its entirety the ceremony to honor Canadian soldiers and Canadian sacrifice. And watch for the cross of sacrifice right in the center of that cemetery, the ultimate Commonwealth War symbol and a symbol of the lives lost. You're watching CBC Morning Live.
To the national anthems. Salute! Parade! Attention!
Je tiens à vous souhaiter la bienvenue au cimetière
I
de
would like to
guerre
welcome you
canadien
to the Bény-sur-Mer Canadian War Cemetery to commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day and the Battle of Normandy.
I would like to welcome you to the Bény-sur-Mer Canadian War Cemetery to commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day and the Battle of Normandy. C'est pour nous un privilège d'être ici dans
It is
ce
our
magnifique
privilege to be here at this
cimetière
beautiful cemetery to remember the sacrifices made by so many, and it is an honor to have with us today veterans who served during D-Day and the Battle of Normandy. Your courage and your sacrifices have formed the country that we love today, and for that, we thank you.
It is our privilege to be here at this beautiful cemetery to remember those who made the sacrifices. And it is our honor to have with us veterans who served during D-Day and the Battle of Normandy. Your courage and sacrifices have formed the country that we love today, and for that, we thank you. Please join me in welcoming all veterans we have with us today. Veuillez vous joindre à moi pour vous
Please
souhaiter la
join me
bienvenue
in
à
welcoming
tous les
the
vétérans
veterans
qui
we
sont
have with
parmi
us
nous
today.
aujourd'hui.
Stand up! Stand at ease.
J'ai le plaisir d'inviter le maire de Bény-sur-Mer.
I would now like to invite Mr. Hubert de Lalande, the mayor of Bény-sur-Mer, to say a few words.
Hubert de Lalande, the mayor of Bény-sur-Mer, to say a few words.
Mesdames, Messieurs, bonjour.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Je suis le
good
maire de
morning.
Bény-sur-Mer.
I am the mayor of Bény-sur-Mer.
6 juin 1944, 6 juin 2024. Le D-Day, le jour le plus long.
The night day in 1944 was the longest day, and it was necessary to remove a brutal enemy. 80 years later, we are here with you,
Devant vous, messieurs les vétérans.
veterans, to support you and honor you. You have traced the road to peace, and you gave us back our freedom.
Mais je mesure combien elle est fragile.
But
Aujourd'hui encore, des hommes
peace
dans le
is so fragile.
monde croient toujours
We
avoir
are still
dominé son
seeing
prochain, alors qu'il y a
countries
tant de
out there
misère
who
et de
wish to
fautes qu'on peut faire
dominate.
sans se faire la guerre. La Normandie, la France, l'Europe,
Normandy,
éternellement
France,
reconnaissante
and
pour
Europe
votre
will
courage
be
et votre
eternally
bravoure.
grateful to you for your bravery and your
Je suis
courage.
heureux et fier de vous accueillir dans ce
I'm
cimetière de
happy and
Bény-sur-Mer
proud
où
to
reposent
welcome you to
2049
this
soldats,
cemetery
dont 6 000
where
Français,
2,400 soldiers
44
lie.
Canadiens, 4 Britanniques. Je suis honoré et
And
fier
I'm
d'accueillir
honored and
l'honorable
proud
Stéphane Dion,
to
ambassadeur du Canada auprès de la
welcome
France et
Stéphane
Monaco,
Dion,
et envoyé spécial auprès de
the,
l'Union européenne et de l'Europe. Je suis honoré et fier d'accueillir l'honorable Ginette Petitpas-Taylor,
as well as the Honorable Ginette Petitpas-Taylor, Minister of Veterans Affairs and Associate Minister of National Defense, the Chief of Defense Staff General Eyre. I'm honored and proud to welcome the Deputy Prefect. Distinguished guests, I am honored and proud to welcome you here today. Dear veterans, I am honored, extremely honored and proud to welcome you to this beautiful Canadian War Cemetery, which is maintained by the Commonwealth Commission, including Mr. Samuel Devasseur. We are here to not forget our companions at arms who fought for our freedom. We thank you for your courage, your valor, your bravery, for pushing back an enemy. Today, I am sad to hear of the death of a Canadian veteran, William Cameron. The mayor of Bény-sur-Mer and the people of this community support you. And we extend our sincere condolences to the family. We also extend our condolences to your comrades at arms. His military career was exemplary. William Cameron was born in Manitoba in 1922. He began his military career in Vancouver, British Columbia. He then served as a second-class sailor and served until 1946. During World War II, Mr. Cameron served in various positions. He was part of the Canadian vessels that landed. He ensured the protection of Augusta with Admiral Bradley. A number of troops were also fighting on Omaha Beach. Mr. Cameron was on the Kushner. He was in charge of the cannons and to protect the many ships transporting the troops and bringing in supplies to reach the beachhead. Mr. Cameron received the Medal of Normandy, the Medal of Defense, the Medal of the Legion of Honor for his long service. He worked until 1949, and Mr. Cameron and his wife were married in 1949 and had 3 children, 9 great-grandchildren, and members of the Royal Canadian Legion have honored him. We would like to observe a moment of silence for veteran Cameron.
Merci.
Thank you. Dear veterans, the people liberated by Canadian forces are honored to be in your presence. We will never forget your sacrifice. This place allows us to remain respectful of all those Canadian soldiers. A number of soldiers lost their lives, including one who died in 1944. This person was simple and modest, but had great courage. There's only a cross in front of his grave. Minister General, we want to thank you for greeting Mr. Marceau in this cemetery. Today is a great day for all of us, for the people of our community. I inaugurated a memorial site at Bény-sur-Mer in homage to the first soldiers who fell at the front, the airmen that we must not forget either. We are commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Royal Canadian Air Force. And we honor Mr. Albert Sauper. I want this place to be a place of reflection and gratitude for future generations. And we will have a number of events and leave the community in procession to the cemetery. And please come in great numbers to share this moment of fraternity with us. Thank you for your kind attention. Long live France, long live Canada, and long live the Franco-Canadian friendship.
Merci, Monsieur Delalande.
Thank you, Mr. Delalande.
To summarize Monsieur Delalande's words in English, on the 80th anniversary of D-Day, we honor the sacrifices of soldiers who liberated Europe. Former foes are now friends, and we remember the fallen and salute the veterans present for restoring our freedom and at a great cost. At the Bény-sur-Mer Cemetery, where 2,449 soldiers rest, we are joined by the distinguished guests from Canada and France. We express deep gratitude for the soldiers' courage and bravery. We mourn the recent passing of Canadian veteran William Bill Howard Cameron, observing a minute's silence in his honor. We also remember Marceau Guénard, a French civilian who died aiding Canadian soldier. This afternoon, a memorial will be inaugurated to honor the first soldiers buried at Bény-sur-Mer and Canadian airmen, marking the Royal Canadian Air Force 100th anniversary. We aim to make this place one of gratitude, peace, and reflections for future generations. Long live France, Canada, and the Franco-Canadian friendship. J'ai maintenant le plaisir d'inviter le maire de Rivière,
I would now like to invite Mr. Daniel Guérin, Mayor of Rivière, to say a few words.
I would now like to invite Monsieur Daniel Guérin, Mayor of Rivière, to say a few words.
Mesdames, Messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen,
chers vétérans,
dear veterans,
l'honorable Stéphane Dion, ambassadeur
the Honorable
du Canada,
Stéphane Dion, Ambassador of Canada to France and Monaco, and Special Envoy to the European Union and Europe. The Honorable Ginette Petitpas-Taylor, Minister of Veterans Affairs and Associate Minister of National Defense.
Monsieur le Préfet, Monsieur Guy
Mr. Prefect,
Chef d'État-Major de la Défense
Chief of Defense Staff,
Air.
General Air,
l'honorable
the
Premier
Honorable
ministre
Premier
Wab Kinyet,
Wab Kinew,
Premier ministre du Manitoba,
Premier of Manitoba,
capitaine de corvette d'Arcy-Burn,
Paul Ledwell,
sous-ministre des anciens
Deputy
combattants,
Minister of Veterans Affairs Canada,
l'honorable Beverly
the
Busson,
Honorable
sénatrice,
Beverly Busson, Senator,
l'honorable Margot
the Honorable Margot
sénatrice,
Greenwood, Senator, Marie-France Lalonde, Member of Parliament for Orléans and Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defense, Rachel Blanet, Member of Parliament for North Island, Luc Desilets, Member of Parliament for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles, Québec. Pierre Paulus, Member of Parliament for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Blake Richards, Member of Parliament for Banff Airdrie. Canadian Second World War veterans and veterans of D-Day and the Battle of Normandy. Government of Canada delegation, Canadian Armed Forces representatives.
Monsieur le conseiller régional Cédric Douvelot,
Mr. Cédric
Mesdames
Bulot,
et Messieurs les maires adjoints
the
et
ladies and
conseillers,
gentlemen, mayors of the communities,
Mesdames et Messieurs
ladies
en vos
and
grades et
gentlemen,
qualités. Nous nous rassemblons aujourd'hui
we
pour
gather
commémorer
today
le
to
80e
commemorate the
anniversaire du
80th
6 juin
anniversary
1944.
of June 6, 1944. This is a moment that is engraved on our memories and on the people, the memories of the people of this area. People sacrificed their lives for our freedom on that day. On June 6, 1944, our beaches saw incredible courage displayed. Brave soldiers moved forward onto the beaches, conquered the enemy with great determination. Their courage and their sacrifice opened the way towards freedom, marking the end of a very dark period in our history. On that memorable day, we pay homage to our heroes that fell in the line of duty, those who continued to serve their country with honor and bravery. Their contribution will be remembered for generations to come, and it's a precious memory, and we must defend it. As we gather today, let us fill our hearts with gratitude for those who gave their lives so that we could live in a better world. Let us pledge to maintain their memory and to work towards peace, freedom, and democracy, those values for which they've bravely fought. May this commemoration be a solemn reminder of our duty to preserve and protect freedom, to perpetuate peace, and to hand down those values to our children. The greatest contribution of all, so that no one will ever have to see the trials of war again.
Merci, Monsieur Guérin. Thank you.
Thank
To summarize
you.
Monsieur Guérin's words in English, today we commemorate the 80th anniversary of June 6, 1944, a pivotal moment in the history of the Commune and Normandy coast. We honor the brave Allied soldier who landed on our beaches, showing the extraordinary courage and dedication. Their sacrifices marked the beginning of the end of a dark period in history and paved the way to freedom. As we pay tribute to both the fallen heroes and the survivors, we are reminded that freedom is precious and comes at a high price. Let us pledge to uphold the ideas of freedom, democracy, and peace, ensuring these values are passed to our children so that they may never have to face the trials of war. Mesdames et Messieurs, l'Honorable Ginette
and
Petitpas-Taylor, Ministre des Anciens Combattants,
The
Canada,
Honourable Ginette
et
Petitpas-Taylor,
Ministre
Minister of
associée de la
Veterans
Défense
Affairs Canada and Associate
Ladies and
Minister of
gentlemen,
National Defence.
The Honourable Ginette Petitpas-Taylor, Minister of Veterans Affairs Canada and Associate Minister of National Defence. Please welcome and welcome Minister Petitpas-Taylor.
Esteemed veterans, Ambassadeur Dion,
Ambassador
High
Dion,
Commissioner Goodale, General Eyre, Premier Canoe, Maire des différentes communes,
mayors of the different
family,
communities,
friends, parliamentarians. 80 years ago, ordinary young Canadians hailing from northern New Brunswick to southwestern Ontario, across the northwestern Saskatchewan, and all the way to the northern tip of the Saanich Peninsula, pledged service to their country. Today, some of the finest Canadians, the best of the best, are with us today. Beaucoup de temps s'est écoulé depuis ces vétérans
there has
ont
been a lot
combattu
of
sur les
time
champs de bataille de la Seconde Guerre
go
mondiale,
by
y
since these
compris
veterans
ici
fought on the
en
beaches here in France.
Cela signifie qu'en plus de
That
leurs années de
means
sagesse, ils
that,
ont aussi eu plusieurs années
they
pour
had a number of
réfléchir
years
à ce
to
qui était
reflect
en jeu en
on
1944.
what happened in
La
1944.
démocratie, la
Democracy,
libération,
liberation,
la paix.
and peace.
Our soldiers were about to show the world what Canadians are made of. They arrived in France in waves starting in the early hours of June 6, 1944. D-Day, known as Operation Overlord. In a way, it was the beginning of the end of the Second World War. Through rough waters, beach obstacles, barbed wire mines, and heavy enemy gunfire, the Canadians stormed ashore at Juno Beach, determined to accomplish their mission: to help secure an Allied beachhead strong enough to withstand enemy counterattacks. Pendant tout ce temps, ils ont fait
During
des
that time,
sacrifices,
they
des
made
sacrifices
sacrifices,
énormes.
huge
Ils ont perdu
sacrifices.
des amis,
They lost friends and family members, but they triumphed against all expectations. But the price they paid was a high one. And we have evidence of that today. This Canadian War Cemetery is the resting place of so many brave soldiers. The soldiers who fell in the line of duty in 1944. The division and brigade were representing soldiers from across the country, including the 9th Battalion, and some were from Ontario, one from Quebec, one from the Western Provinces, and 2 from the Maritimes. The 3 regiments were from Ontario, Manitoba, and Quebec, respectively.
In the end, the Allied liberation of Normandy would claim the lives of more than 5,000 Canadians.
We would like to ensure that the people resting here will know that we remember them.
By sharing the stories of our two nations bound together by this tragic chapter in our history. And once again, ordinary Canadians are called upon to participate. Canadians like me, a girl from Dieppe, New Brunswick, are called upon to keep the flame of remembrance alive. This is how we will continue to rekindle the flame. To our veterans here today, I stand before you as a grateful Canadian. We thank you for your service, and we will always remember. Today, I invite each of us to bring these acts of remembrance home and keep these stories alive. À vous, les gens de la France.
To you, the people of France, thank you for remembering the brave Canadians who fought here and died to liberate your country.
Lest we forget.
Merci, Madame la Ministre. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Minister.
I now invite the Canadian Armed Forces Padre, Lieutenant Colonel Michel Dion, and Elder Josie Searson to offer a blessing. J'invite maintenant Lieutenant-Colonel Michel Dion.
I now invite the Canadian Armed Forces Padre, Lieutenant Colonel Michel Dion, and Elder Josie Searson to offer blessings.
Good morning, everyone. It is a real honor for me to be here today to represent the veterans. And I would like to share, recently I heard about the Cree language that was spoken during the time that benefited the war situation at that time of the Cree code talkers. So I would like to share my language with you this morning in English and Cree. Notawi nan, Creator God, we are so thankful for your presence with us today in Bény-sur-Mer at the Canadian War Cemetery. To remember the veterans who served on our behalf. Those brave veterans left their homelands and they provided safety and peace for all of us, each and every one of us. We are also grateful for, Lord, we are also grateful for your direction and safety for the veterans who returned safely home and are present here today. We are being provided with hearing and listening as they share their stories and experiences with us. That has been so impacting, very impacting. En sego no tawinan, anotskagi sigak, kinanasko mitnan. Unta pekki pewichiak, unta kista eaien, misti weite ute. Nina, unta anima, itakagina aniitsika, kittinniminanak. Esta puu, käsminaga nooma itakagina aniitsik. En sego mina wista ons. Ei, egi wichiwetsik mistai, ego spiikanima. Atina kiskeni tagan, atitegiga inogiga gittimagistik. Maga hutstapu kigaski taog. Tansianima egiteni tagik. Ego mina, nina naskamuna ananima. Ni kagi tattagustigik. Ego no gutta kapitsikagi no. Kagi tagustigik. Eminojatsik. Aten tape egi mama magu tatsik. Egi spika gutega jatsik. Ego simagego nina naskamun mistai. And so, Lord, we do thank you. We thank you for all your blessings. And we will remember the veterans forever and ever. Kagige, mina kagige. Thank you.
On the eve of the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion, we pause to spiritually reflect upon those Canadians who, having willingly answered the call to serve their nation on the seas and the skies and on fields far away, laid down their life during the Allied invasion of Normandy in June and July of 1944. Ce matin, nous demandons humblement que la miséricorde et le repos éternel soient accordés aux 2049 soldats, aviateurs et marins ici enterrés, et que la consolation et le réconfort soient assurés aux familles et aux êtres chers des disparus qui, malgré les années, continuent à peiner leurs pertes. Having witnessed here with our own eyes the horrific consequences of war for our country and the world, we humbly ask that solace and healing be granted upon those who, in bereavement, disability, and pain, continue to suffer today the consequences of war and who bear deep wounds, both seen and unseen. En ce jour, nous nous engageons à accorder un soutien constant envers les victimes de la guerre et à œuvrer avec une ardeur renouvelée en faveur de la réconciliation entre nations pour que tous les peuples puissent vivre harmonieusement en paix, dans la liberté et la justice. In closing, I offer you the following words of inspiration. Be of good courage, and hold fast to that which is good. Render unto no one evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted, and support the weak. Love your country. Protect its freedom, and strive always for the establishment of justice and peace. À l'instar de l'exemple de nos disparus, que nos pensées et gestes soient guidés par l'amour du prochain, que notre espérance dans des lendemains meilleurs nous motive et nous fortifie, et que la paix demeure avec nous tout au long de ce jour. Merci.
Thank you, Padre and Elder Season. J'ai maintenant l'honneur de vous présenter
I now
Sergeant
have the
Shani
honor to
Slade,
introduce
membre des
Sergeant
Forces
Shani
armées
Slade of the
canadiennes,
Canadian Armed
qui
Forces,
récitera l'acte du
who will
souvenir
now
en anglais
recite
et en
the
français.
Act of Remembrance
I
in
now
English
have
and
the honor
French.
to introduce Sergeant Shani Slade of the Canadian Armed Forces, who will recite the Act of Remembrance in English and in French.
They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemned. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Ils ne vieilliront pas comme nous qui leur avons survécu. Ils ne connaîtront jamais l'outrage ni le poids des années. Quand viendra l'heure du crépuscule et celle de l'aurore, nous nous souviendrons d'eux.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup. In the spirit of Veterans Act of Remembrance, the commitment to remember was written to express the pledge of the youth to carry the torch of remembrance. Dans l'esprit de l'acte du souvenir des vétérans,
In the spirit of the Veterans
la promesse
Act
de
of
se
Remembrance,
souvenir
the
des
commitment
jeunes
to
a été
remember
créée
was written
pour
to express
exprimer
the
leur
pledge of
engagement à
youth
porter le
to
flambeau
carry
du
the
souvenir.
torch of remembrance.
J'invite maintenant Yanis Akkar et Sam
I would
Smith
now like to
à
invite
venir
Yanis
lire la
Akkar and
promesse de se
to
souvenir.
read the commitment to
I would now
remember.
like to invite Yanis Akkar and Sam Smith to read the commitment to remember.
They were young, as we are young. They served, giving freely of themselves. To them, we pledge, amid the winds of time, to carry their torch and never forget. We will remember them.
Ils étaient jeunes, jeunes comme nous. Ils ont servi, donnant généreusement d'eux-mêmes. Nous leur promettons, en dépit du temps qui passe, de porter le flambeau et de ne jamais oublier. Nous nous souviendrons d'eux.
Merci. Thank you. Mesdames et messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise as Corporal Stephen Abra will now play the last post, followed by a minute of silence and the rouse. Following is Sergeant Brennan Pickerton-Noncock, who will perform the lament.
Ladies and gentlemen, please rise as Corporal Stephen Abra will now play the last post, followed by a minute of silence and the rouse. Following is Sergeant Brennan Pinkerton-Cock, who will perform the lament. Please be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir.
Stand at ease. Guard. Stand at ease.
I would now like to introduce Alison Boimier and Laura Bayarjean Ramirez to share stories of two Canadian soldiers who are buried here at Bény-sur-Mer. Raphaël Deslondes and Morgan Ginther are standing beside their gravestone where they are buried, holding their photos. J'aimerais maintenant présenter
I would
Alison
now like to
Boimier et
introduce
Laura
Alison
Bayarjean
Boimier
Ramirez,
and Laura
qui vont vous
Bayarjean
raconter
Ramirez
l'histoire
to
de
share
deux
the
soldats
stories of
canadiens
two Canadian
qui sont
soldiers
enterrés
who are
ici
buried
à
here
Bény-sur-Mer.
at Bény-sur-Mer.
Raphaël Deslondes et Morgan Ginther se tiennent
Morgan
à côté de
Ginter
leur plaque
and
tombale,
a
là où
colleague
ils
are
sont
standing
enterrés
beside
avec
where
leur
the
photo.
soldiers are buried with their photos.
Private Henry Chester Bateman. Private Henry Chester Bateman was born on April 12, 1924, in England, but grew up in New Brunswick. Private Bateman's journey of valor began at a young age, leaving behind the familiar comforts of farm life to answer the call of duty in August 1943. He was from Shediac, Westmoreland County, New Brunswick. Assigned to the North Shore Regiment, Henry faced the brutal realities of war with determination. At just 20 years old, Private Bateman made the ultimate sacrifice in service to his country. Though his life was tragically cut short, his spirits live on in the hearts of all those who cherish the freedom for which he fought so valiantly for. Le soldat Henry Chester Bateman est né le 12 avril 1924
Private
en
Henry
Angleterre,
Chester
mais
Bateman
a
was born on
grandi au
April 12,
Nouveau-Brunswick.
1924 in England, but grew up in New Brunswick. Private Bateman's journey of valor began at a young age, leaving behind the familiar comforts of farm life to answer the call of duty in August 1943. He was the son of Edward Byron Bateman from Shediac, Westmoreland County, New Brunswick. Assigned to the North Shore Regiment, Henry faced the brutal realities of war with determination. At just 20 years of age, Private Bateman made the ultimate sacrifice in service to his country. Though his life was tragically cut short, his spirit lives on in the hearts of all those who cherish freedom, which he so valiantly fought for.
Warrant Officer John Forbes. Warrant Officer John Forbes embodied the spirit of courage and dedication as he served with distinction in the esteemed ranks of the Queen's Own Rifles of Canada. Enlisting in 1940, Warrant Officer Forbes demonstrated his unwavering commitment to his country, serving in Newfoundland before bravely stepping onto foreign soil in July 1941. Born in Toronto, Ontario, he was the beloved son of Thomas, Patrick, and Annie Forbes. He was the youngest brother to Harold, Tom, Bill, and Gladys. Warrant Officer Forbes was tragically killed on June 11, 1944, at the young age of 26. Just 3 months prior to his deployment overseas, he exchanged vows with Miss Vera Hackett, highlighting the sacrifices made by both soldiers and their families during their service. Today, as we honor his memory and pay tribute to his service, let us also remember the profound debt of gratitude owed to all those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the defense of freedom and justice. L'adjutant John Forbes
Warrant Officer John Forbes embodied the spirit of courage and dedication as he served with distinction in the esteemed ranks of the Queen's Own Rifles of Canada. Enlisting in 1940, Warrant Officer Forbes demonstrated his unwavering commitment to his country, serving in Newfoundland before bravely stepping onto foreign soil in July 1941. Born in Toronto, he was the beloved son of Thomas Patrick and Annie Forbes. He was the youngest brother to Harold, Tom, Bill, and Gladys. Warrant Officer Forbes was tragically killed on June 11, 1944, at the young age of 26. Just 3 months prior to his deployment overseas, he exchanged vows with Ms. Vera Hackett, highlighting the sacrifices made by both soldiers and their families during their service. Today, as we honor his memory and pay tribute to his service, let us also remember the profound debt of gratitude owed to all those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in the defense of freedom and justice.
Merci. Thank you. Nous allons maintenant procéder au dépôt de gerbe.
We will now proceed with the wreath laying. I would like to ask the following dignitaries to come forward to lay a wreath. All others who would like to lay a wreath may do so at the end of the ceremony.
We will now proceed with our wreath laying. I would now like to ask the following dignitaries to come forward to lay a wreath. All others who would like to lay a wreath may do so at the end of the ceremony. L'Honorable Ginette Petitpas-Taylor.
The Honorable Ginette Petitpas-Taylor on behalf of Canada.
Petitpas-Taylor on behalf of Canada.
Attention!
Monsieur Guy Fitzer, sous-préfet de Lisieux. Sir Guy Fitzer, sous-préfet of Lisieux on behalf of France. Monsieur Blake Richards, au nom du Parlement du Canada.
Mr. Blake Richards, on behalf of the Parliament of Canada.
Of the Parliament of Canada. Monsieur Paul Ledwell, au nom d'anciens combattants
Ledwell
Canada.
on behalf of Veterans Affairs Canada.
On behalf of Veterans Affairs Canada. Général Wayne Donald
General
Eyre et l'adjudant-chef
on
Bob McCann
behalf
au
of
nom
the
des
Canadian
Forces
Armed
armées
Forces.
canadiennes. General Wayne Donald Eyre and Chief Warrant Officer Bob McCann on behalf of the Canadian Armed Forces.
Stand at ease.
L'honorable Premier ministre
The
Wab Kinew,
Honorable
au nom des
Premier
peuples du
Wab
Manitoba.
Kinew, on behalf of the
Honorable
people of
Premier
Manitoba.
Wab Kinew, on behalf of the people of Manitoba. Anthony Mason et Tyrell Muskego, en nez de la jeunesse. Anthony Mason and Tyrell Muskego on the behalf of the youth.
On behalf of youth.
Monsieur Daniel Guérin, maire de Rivière, et Monsieur Hubert de Lalande, maire de Bény-sur-Mer, au nom de la France. Mr. Daniel Guérin, mayor of Rivière, and Monsieur Hubert de Lalande, mayor of Bény-sur-Mer, on behalf of France. Monsieur Thomas Dupont-Frédérici,
Mr. Thomas Dupont-Frédérici, mayor of Bény-sur-Mer.
Frédérici, préfet of Cavaldos. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank each and every one of you for coming today and sharing this very important anniversary with us. Mesdames et messieurs, je vous tiens
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming today and sharing this important anniversary with us. Today's event and the commemorative ceremonies hosted over the next few days are vital for each generation to fully understand the peace, the freedom, and the opportunity that we all enjoy today. It has been my great pleasure to participate and to see such passion and commitment to the spirit of remembrance.
Today's event and the commemorative ceremonies hosted over the next few days are vital for each generation to fully understand the peace, the freedom, and the opportunity that we enjoy today. It has been my great pleasure to participate and to see such passion and commitment to the spirit of remembrance. For those who are in the area this evening, a candlelight ceremony will be happening at 10 p.m. Candles will be lit at each gravestone here at Bény-sur-Mer Cemetery. We are hoping that you can be part of this special event. For
those who will be in the area this evening, a candlelight ceremony will be happening at 10 p.m. Candles will be lit at each gravestone here at Bény-sur-Mer Cemetery. We are hoping you can be part of this special event. This concludes the formal part of our event, and we thank you for your presence here.
This concludes the formal part of our event. We thank you for your presence. We would like to invite you to visit the gravesite. Veterans Affairs Canada guides, as well as the Juno Beach Center guides, are able to assist you if you require. Nous vous invitons à visiter les pierres tombales.
We invite you to visit the grave sites. Veterans Affairs Canada's guides, as well as the Juno Beach Center guides, are all able to assist if you require assistance. We will remember them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Royal Canadian Air Force Centennial Band. By the right, break, march. Shut.
You're watching CBC Morning Live. The Canadian Armed Forces Band at the culmination of a very emotional, respectful hour that we are delighted to have carried for you live here on CBC News Network. It is June the 5th, and tomorrow marks the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Canada is such a key part of the Allied forces, the 150,000 who stormed the beaches of Normandy, beginning of the end before Nazis in control of that part of Europe. And of course, we'll be talking about it today and tomorrow. But on this June the 5th, what you've just watched, and there is Canada's Minister of Veterans Affairs speaking with some of the members of the Canadian delegation, the people who are really at the focal point of today's commemorations and our remembrance today and tomorrow, the veterans who have made the trip back to Normandy. These are veterans who are in their late 90s into their hundreds. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. But as we linger on these images of the minister greeting those who have traveled from Canada to be there in France, you heard her mention that today and tomorrow we honor really what Canadians are made of. The battle, Richard Romer, we're going to talk about in a moment, the battle in which Canada really made a contribution and was acknowledged as having done so by its allies, by the other Western leaders, a tremendous military success for Canada, but at terrible cost. And there in the Canadian War Cemetery, the Bény-sur-Mer Canadian War Cemetery, more than 2,000 of the Canadians who paid the ultimate sacrifice are buried, and many lost their lives on June the 6th of 1944, right at the very beginning of the D-Day battle and arriving on the beach, the Juno Beach. Watching all of that in the last hour, this is just extraordinary, John. John Northcott, of course, part of our show for so many years. He's now the co-host of World Report, and tomorrow he's going to be hosting, along with Nala Ayed, the radio version of the D-Day commemoration, the special international commemoration hosted by France. But today, John, with me, and I'm delighted to have some time with you, as we watch those scenes, it always comes back to the veterans, doesn't it?
It really does. And I've been very fortunate, perhaps because of the sort of jobs I've had over my life before getting into journalism, to have worked and known a number of veterans. And it's been a remarkable exploration because, as you're saying, the youngest is in their late 90s now. And this is a chance to be able to talk to them. And in the veterans that I've talked to over the years, often they tell stories about a buddy or something funny that happened, or something that was a moment of relief, or something, or a woman they danced with, or something not necessarily in the heat of battle. But it seems now, and perhaps this is something that, because they are aware of being the last witnesses, that I'm hearing stories now from veterans about what it was like, and maybe the concern and the anxiety over the last 80 years has been blunted. But I know that many of them take it very seriously, that they are witnesses. They're there to talk to young people, and they're always very impressed when they go to a school and talk to a young person, because of course the kids are prepped and told and instructed, but they're very impressed that young people do have an appreciation for what they did for them.
And the first person accounts are so much more impactful than any textbook account that they read about. So it does have a mark. I want to talk about some of the veterans to whom you've been speaking. But again, coming back, you've been to commemorations, looking at the images, and we'll keep playing them for you. We're going to play that whole ceremony in its entirety in the next hour again. But looking at them, John, and hearing the last post, images, close-ups of the veterans, the Canadians who have traveled, the 13 of them, you know, their eyes are open. You just wonder, their mind's eye, what are they seeing as they hear the last post, and what are they thinking of now that they're back on those beaches in that area for probably the last time of their lives? One of the things that stood out for me, and maybe we can talk about that because it certainly ties in with what we were just mentioning. One of the moments of impact was when one of the mayors talked about Bill Cameron, and he was a gunner on HMCS Kingston. He had planned to be part of the Canadian delegation. He was there for the 70th, and he was there for the 75th anniversary, and he was so excited to be going to the 80th. I think we have a picture of him. He knew it would be his last time, but the account from the family in the local newspaper, he's from British Columbia, he died on the eve of his departure with his bags packed and ready to go, which just underscores, you know, the need to hear these stories, because we are losing these veterans rapidly, as you say, in late 90s into their hundreds, and it's harder and harder to keep history alive.
And to recognize the various services that took part of this. In the Navy, of course, there are 62 Canadian naval vessels, not counting the thousands of landing craft as well. Canadian naval personnel commanding those precarious landing craft that then came into the shore. In the air as well, of course, as reconnaissance and fighter pilots, and of course on the beaches itself. itself. And then in a supportive aspect in terms of the nurses, the Women's Air Corps that were involved. So it wasn't, of course, just men. It was women as well involved. But on the front lines, because of the way wars were conducted in those days, it was the men. They knew that something was going to happen. And this is what's so fascinating about this whole story, that there was so much deception with this fake army in Kent, with General Patton commanding an army of planes made of canvas and wood, tanks, inflatable rubber tanks, all to deceive the Germans that they were coming across at Pas-de-Calais to the north, the shortest cross of the channel. And to have that kept under wraps, hundreds of thousands of troops. There are 1.5 million Americans in the UK when this was being prepared, and of course tens of thousands of Canadians. The idea that they were to keep this under wraps until virtually the vessels were in the water, and then the Germans had some sense because of the radar there was something going on. And though even for days after the invasion itself, the Germans thought it was a false attack, that the real attack was going to come at Normandy. So when you talk about the Navy, you talk about Bill Cameron and the Navy, they were instrumental there in being able to bombard and protect with those 62 vessels that were coming across, with those 11,000 vessels coming across the English Channel.
14,000 plus Canadians storming the shores of Juno Beach, some flying above. Tell me a little bit about someone to whom you have been spoken, not a fighter pilot, but someone involved in the reconnaissance that you just mentioned, because this will be a key part of your coverage.
Yes, exactly. Lieutenant General Richard Romer, remarkable individual, turned 100 this year, 135 reconnaissance missions in his P-51 Mustang. The idea of being able to survive 25 or 50 or 75 missions is itself almost infinitesimally possible because of the logistics of that. They were instructed for reconnaissance, so they couldn't fire back, even though they had armed aircraft. But the idea being, in their shots of he and his buddies, the idea being around this that they knew they were doing something important. When they put white stripes on the wings of his plane the day before, he knew they were going to be involved and take to the air soon, very soon. So here he is describing what they understood, the significance of what it is they were doing, because they did understand that.
There was a great euphoric moment for all the young people like myself. I was the youngest one by far in my squadron at 19. It was a moment of great uplifting and consequence for each individual who survived that. As a fantastic piece of the war to be involved in at that moment, at that time. We knew it was going to be significant.
So knowing that it was significant, and knowing, and interesting, because so many I've talked to talk not so much about fear, but about excitement. He used the word euphoria. The idea being that they had for so long been training in the UK, and this was a chance. Canada had been in Italy, of course, Monte Cassino and some of those battles, but the idea being that they were going to make a difference now. They were keen to be there.
And he was there today, one of the Canadians, one of the veterans there in person at Bény-sur-Mer, the Canadian War Cemetery. There you see his arrival, the salute, the symbols right in front of the cross of sacrifice, which is so apt, of course. The symbols, the music, the tributes, all so familiar, but with an extra poignancy to see these veterans, 100 years old, and look at the medals and distinguished honors.
Yeah, he served for decades after the war. He's still considered an active service member. He's an honorary lieutenant general in this. He's hoping to meet King Charles. They've rendezvoused over the years at ceremonies, and he's hoping to be able to do that.
King Charles is in Portsmouth leading the commemorations there. John, thank you so much. Of course, tomorrow, much to look forward to, more of those interviews and coverage of the commemorations from Omaha. This will be held tomorrow, D-Day, the 80th anniversary, and John, along with Nala Ayed, will be hosting that for you on CBC Radio and on the CBC Listen app. 1 p.m. Eastern is when it begins, 2 p.m. Atlantic. That's 2:30 in Newfoundland, wherever you listen. And John, thank you again so very much. So as we have been mentioning, more than 14,000 Canadians stormed those beaches, and Canada's job was to take Juno Beach. The battalions who fought their way ashore, they came from all over this country. There were 3 from Ontario, 1 from Quebec, 3 from Western Canada, 2 from the Maritimes. The North Shore team from New Brunswick. And let's take you to New Brunswick for live coverage next. Veterans Affairs Canada is hosting a series of public events to commemorate this 80th. And in Dieppe, it is focused. That is where we find Brett Ruskin today, ahead of the ceremony. Brett, good morning. I'm glad to have you as part of our special coverage today. What is going to be happening there in Dieppe?
Good morning, Heather, and welcome to Dieppe indeed. So this is the cenotaph here in Dieppe, where there's going to be a wreath laying happening here today. In the next couple of hours, there's going to be the ambassador of France to Canada here. There's going to be the mayor of Dieppe, as well as the lieutenant general from the Canadian Armed Forces. They are going to be laying wreaths here at the Dieppe cenotaph, which commemorates the Dieppe raid. Now, a reminder about what the Dieppe raid was. 1942, 2 years before D-Day, same idea with an amphibious assault on the shore. Strategically and militarily, perhaps not a success, but lessons learned from that raid. And we're going to be seeing this kind of backdrop here, the cenotaph later on, perhaps from farther distance. There's lots of chairs set up here, but if you can see the individual pebbles and stones in this cenotaph here behind me, 913 stones in 10 different groups. These stones come from the beaches of Dieppe. They're in 10 different groups representing the 10 regiments and the 913 Canadians who lost their lives during the Battle of Dieppe. So again, that was 1942. 1944 is what we are commemorating today, with again a contingent of veterans who will be here to lay wreaths here at the cenotaph. One of many events, another one happening this evening at 8 o'clock, and then tomorrow once again around 2:30 local time, with Veterans Affairs Canada offering these events for veterans who perhaps weren't able to make it overseas to Europe for those commemoration ceremonies. Heather.
Brett, I will look forward to talking with you later in the morning. Of course, Dieppe is just so appropriate for our discussion today about D-Day. Dieppe, the worst single-day loss for Canada of the Second World War, but the planning that followed, the lessons learned, really set the stage for what came on D-Day, the success that was for Canada and the Allied forces. So, Brett, thank you for that part of the coverage, and we'll talk more. And through the morning, more of the events that are leading up to the 80th anniversary of the D-Day Operation Overlord. Julia Wong is part of our CBC News team, and she's covering a ceremony where a special statue to honor the Royal Regina Rifles coming up a little bit later on. 3 McMaster University students are going to be with us from the Juno Beach Center. They've created something called the Canadian Remembrance Torch, and they are there. They actually took it across the ferry from Portsmouth to Normandy. They're going to be part of our live coverage ahead. We want to hear from you. You know, talking to John, as I just was, so often over the years, John and I have shared memories of his family, my family's military involvement, and yours, with pictures and stories of those who fought in Canada's battalions and forces during the World Wars. Here's another opportunity to share those with us today. Do you have anyone in your family who was part of D-Day, who was on the Juno Beach, who was part of the Battle of Normandy? We'd love to hear those stories. Send your pictures to us as well. We will share them today and tomorrow, morning live at CBC.ca. Tomorrow, another significant emotional day in store, and CBC will have special coverage. Our chief correspondent, Adrienne Arsenault, will be returning to the beaches of Normandy. She'll be leading our commemoration as part of the international commemoration hosted by France.